Hello everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to make a quick bar of soap to go with our little soap dispensers, and then we're going to make some cool lights real quick if we above the table if we can. And the next one, I think we're also going to make a mirror to add, so it looks a bit more like a bathroom. You'd expect to be able to look at yourself in the mirror. So anyways, let's get started real quick. We're going to make sure our 3D cursor is right here by hitting Shift C. Zoom in, and then I'm going to hit Shift A, add mesh, and we're just going to add a cube. I'm going to hit period to zoom in on it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to move it up so we can actually see it. Then we're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to scale it. We're going to hit S and then Z to scale it on the Z axis, S and then X to scale it on the X, and then S and Y to scale it in a bit more. And then I'm just going to press S once to scale it down, make it about the size of a bar soap. And we're going to hit SX. We're just going to kind of mess with it, locking the axes, making it look like a rectangle basically. So once you get something you're happy with, what we're going to do is I think we're just going to apply a quick bevel all around. So I'm going to hit A to select every face, and then when you hit Control B, it'll bevel every edge since you have all the edges selected. So we're just going to drag a bit to make it a bit round, and then we're going to mouse up a couple times to add a bit more geometry so it isn't as hard, and then we're going to just left click, and then you see we have some more geometry. And then we're going to hit Tab to get out of edit mode, and we're going to go Object, and then we're going to go Shade Smooth, and very basic. And while we're here, we're going to throw material on it. So we're going to hit New Material, and we're going to name this Soap. And in the reference picture, if I can pull it up, you can see it's just kind of like a tan color. So we're just going to make a quick tan-ish color. We're going to turn the roughness up all the way because it isn't really supposed to be shiny because it's soap. And we can take a quick look at it, see what it looks like. And yeah, it looks like a bar of soap. And again, it's going to be far from the camera, so we don't have to worry about like etching a name into it or anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to just drag it over here, and we're going to click on this green dot to lock the view real quick. We're going to hit Z, change it to wireframe, and we're just going to drag it over here real quick where all these other soap bottles are. We're going to drag it up, go into side view, and we can just drag it over. You can see, dragging it over. I'm going to hit period to zoom in on it because the camera is getting a bit hard to adjust. We're going to get it so that it's about level on the counter. It can sink in a little bit. And there we go. So there's our soap. And then I'm going to save real quick again. So anyways, let's get started on lighting. So for the lighting, we're going to go real basic. I just kind of want to make like a little thing where we would like house light bulbs, and we're just going to add some basic spheres because it's not really going to be all the way in camera. So let's make a new object real quick. We're going to hit Shift A, and we're going to start out with a cylinder, and we're going to make sure there's nothing on both sides, and then I'm going to drag it up so we can see it a bit better. And 32 vertices is fine as well, by the way. So I'm going to hit Tab, and then I'm going to scale it down a bit. And then I'm going to hit R and then X, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees by typing in 90. Or actually, no, sorry. We're going to hit R to rotate it, and we're going to rotate it on the Y axis by 90 degrees, so it's sideways. And then I'm going to click this red dot right here to go into sort of a front-facing view. I'm going to hit Z in wireframe, so it's a bit easier to see the thing, so it isn't against a white wall. I'm going to hit Alt-A to deselect all the vertices. I'm going to go into vertex select mode. And I'm going to hit B to box select on my keyboard. And then we're just going to select all these faces on the left side. And then we're going to hit X and delete vertices. And then we're going to hit B again to box select. We're going to select these top vertices, and then we're going to hit X and then delete vertices. You can see now, if I go over the object, we have this kind of curved shape that I want to go with. So now that that's done, what we're going to do is I kind of want to quickly spin the geometry around the shape. So I'm going to hit period to focus in on it so it's easier to see. And we're going to go back into edit mode real quick. I'm going to hit C, and I'm going to select these vertices right here. I'm going to right click to turn off circle select, and we're going to want to spin this. So I'm just going to go into 3D cursor mode. I'm just going to click right around here. I'm not sure if the 3D cursor is going to matter in this scenario. Let's just check real quick. So I'm going to hit spin. So you can see it's facing the spin off that direction down there. So if I spin this, it's going to look all weird. So I'm going to hit Control Z to set it back to what it was, and we're going to go to the tool editing panel right here. And I think we want to spin it on the Z axis. Yep. So we're just going to spin it, and it's kind of giving what I want, but I think we just got to move the 3D cursor. So I'm going to hit Control Z. We're going to go back into 3D cursor mode, and what we're going to do is we're going to hit on this. We're going to click on this Z thing right here to go to the top view, and then we're going to click about level with the vertices right here. And while in this view, we're going to go back to spin mode, making sure we have the Z-axis selected so it's blue, and we're just going to spin this real quick. Let's see what that looks. I think that looks fine. Yeah. Yeah, I think we can go with that. Just trying to think here. I think what we should do now is I'm going to click on this green dot right here, and we're going to go into this front view, and I'm going to hit Z wireframe. I'm going to hit Alt A to deselect everything, and I'm going to hit B to go into box select. And what we're going to do is we're going to just drag these vertices. I'm going to click on the arrows here to get the arrows back. And what we want to do is we're going to mirror this so we don't have to repeat the steps for both sides. So I'm going to drag this I'm going to drag the x-axis this way so that this little orange dot means it's the origin, and that's what we're going to mirror based off of. So I'm just going to drag it a little close to it, more so on its side so it isn't overlapping. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the modifiers panel. I'm going to hit add modifier, and I'm going to create a mirror modifier. And you can see now there's if I go into solid view, there's a like reflecting going on. But you notice that it still isn't connected in the center. So what we have to do is go to merge over here. And what it'll do is if the vertices are close enough, it'll connect them. But obviously they're not close enough. So what we can do is bump up that limit by sliding this up. And then once you slide it up far enough, it'll click. So now these vertices are merged. And if you're not getting this result that I'm getting, it might be because you have the wrong axis selected. So for me, the x-axis works. But for example, if you're on the y-axis, you might get some weird direction, or even the z-axis, it isn't going the right way. So I'm just going to make sure the x-axis is selected, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Alt-A to deselect everything. I'm going to go into wireframe again by hitting Z, and I'm going to box select all these vertices over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag them out a bit so we can kind of get some more extended geometry. And I'm going to hit Z, go back into solid view, and since I don't really know what the proportions look like from here, I'm going to drag this over to our countertop. I'm going to go into this front facing view by clicking on that green dot. I'm going to go to wireframe so we can see our table through the bathtub. So I kind of want to shrink it a bit, so I'm going to hit Z, I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode, and I'm going to shrink it in a bit so it's kind of lined up with the table. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it up. So it's probably about level with the shower head, so like the light bulbs are almost within reach. And what we can do is we can drag it towards the wall, and I think what we can do, I don't think I want that bottom showing, so I'm going to drag it so it's all the way in the wall. And what we can do is we can tab into edit mode, and we can delete all these vertices that aren't being shown. So I'm going to turn on backface culling so I can see where they're sticking through the wall, and then I'm going to hit Alt A to make sure nothing else is selected. I'm going to hit C, and I'm just going to quickly circle select these outside vertices. That should be fine. We don't want to get the ones that are sticking through the wall. I'm going to hit X, I'm going to delete vertices, and if we look on the inside, I'm going to turn back on backface culling right here. And you can see that's it's still kind of sticking out a bit, so what we can do is just manually drag these so they're for sure sticking through the wall. And remember, since we're in mirror mode, that action will be repeated on both sides, so that looks good. And then what I can, since we're only going to see the bottom of this from the view of the camera, we don't really have to make it a thick object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just leave it so there isn't any other geometry on the back, and we're just going to go object and then shade smooth, and that looks perfectly fine. So now that's good, let's go to shading, and we can just add that metal shader that we had before so we don't have to go back and make any new shading things. So you see if I go into shading view, we can see it's going to look like a metal. I think that's going to look fine for what we want. So I'm going to go back to layout, and what we can do is we can quickly add some things that look like light bulbs. So to do that, we're going to click on 3D cursor, and we're going to click on the wall. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'm just going to add in a basic UV sphere. And we're going to leave it at 32 segments and 16 rings. You can mess with these and see how they change the shape of it. But I'm going to set it back to its default. And it doesn't have to be too dense in geometry because we're going to shrink it. So what I'm going to do is hit Tab and then shrink it down. And then what I'm going to do is get out of edit mode, and I'm just going to get it in position so it looks like a light bulb is chilling out up here. And then we're going to go Object and then Shade Smooth so that it looks smooth. And I think we're going to drag it down a little bit more. We want it to be barely showing, basically. That looks good. And then what I want to do is I want to make it look like a fluorescent light. So I'm going to go into shading mode. I'm going to create a new shader. I'm going to call this light bulb. And this one we're going to want to tweak with the shading because we don't want a normal PBR shader or principled shader, whatever. So what I'm going to do is, making sure we're editing our light bulb texture and this is showing up, is I'm going to click on it and hit X to delete it. I'm going to hit Shift A to add a new shader, and I'm going to go to Shader and Emission Shader. This is where we can emit light from our object. So we just take that and add it to the surface. I'm going to click Color, and I'm going to make it kind of like a yellowish, like a tan yellow, I guess. Just a little bit to kind of set the mood, and we'll see how that looks in a bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to single out these two objects. So I'm going to click on the light bulb, our little cover, and the wall, and I'm going to hit Shift H so they're singled out so that they don't, now everything's going to be rendered. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this render icon to see what it looks like. So yeah, I think that's basically what we want it to look like, but it isn't strong enough. So we can make it brighter by editing the strength modifier right here. So I'm going to click on it, I'm going to change it to 10 real quick, and we're going to take a look at how that looks like. I think we can bump that up a bit more. We want it to be like a really bright fluorescent light. So I'm going to change it to 25. And remember, we're gonna add more of these. Okay, I think that looks fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some more of them. So we can do that actually real quickly by just adding another modifier. So I'm going to go to modifiers, making sure only a circle is selected. I'm going to go back to layout mode so we can get a better look at this. And I'm going to go to that modifiers tab. I'm going to hit add modifier, and we're going to add an array modifier. And what this will do is we can add an array of objects based off whatever one it's applied to. So we can change relative offset or constant offset, which is pretty self-explanatory. Constant is at a constant length, but relative is based off the size of the object. So in this case, we're just going to we're going to bump up the X a bit so that it's a bit separated like that. And then we're just going to up the count amount to add a few more. And I think that looks fine. And we don't have to apply it. We could, if we hit apply, it'll apply this. And when we go into edit mode, we can edit the geometry of each one of these. But in this case, I think it looks fine. So we're going to go back into render view and see what this looks like. And as you can see, even though it wasn't quite all rendered out, you can see how bright it was. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to hit Alt-H to bring everything back. And I think that's pretty good. So we're almost out of time here. So in the next episode, we're going to quickly add in a mirror, and I should have a texture for us to add to the glass to add some of that grunge that I was talking about earlier to make it look more realistic. So thanks for watching. Make sure to save your Blender files at the end of every video. And if you have any comments, please leave them below. And thanks for watching.